So in this question, I'm being asked to complete the pattern, but instead of working with whole numbers, I'm working with decimals. So basically, it's the exact same process as when you're working with whole numbers. You still have to ask yourself, what do I need to do to get from this first number to the second number? And then what do I need to do to get from that number to the next number? And you'll work out that you do the same thing each time, and then you can use that to work out what the next number is. But because we're working with decimals, there's one thing we have to remember, and that's that this is our units column or our ones column, and this is our tenths column. So that 3 there actually represents 3/10, not 3. So we're just going to remember that for later. But we're just going to work out the pattern. So 1.3 to 1.5. Now we can actually, just for a second, get rid of the decimals and pretend that these are whole numbers, and we can see the pattern really clearly. From 3 to 5, we're going up by 2. So we add 2. From 5 to 7, we're going up by 2 again. So I'm guessing that the pattern is that we add 2 each time. But we have to remember that these were decimals. So this is actually 1 3/10, this is 1 5/10, and this is 1 7/10. So instead of going up by 2s, we're actually going up by 2/10. Okay, so we have to make sure that we've done this. It's actually 2/10, so it's going to be plus 0.2. Okay, so if you've got 1 3/10 and you add 2 more tenths, then you're going to end up with 1 5/10. And if you've got 1 5/10 and you add another 2/10 again, you're going to end up with 1 7/10. So the next number in the pattern, if we add another 2/10, you've got 1 7/10, and we're going to add another 2/10, we end up with 1 9/10, right? Because 7 plus 2 is 9. So 7/10 plus 2/10 is 9/10. And the next number in the pattern, we're still going to add 2/10. Now this is going to take us to our next whole number, isn't it? Because 1 9/10, if I add another tenth, well then I'm going to end up with 1 10/10, which means I've got a whole, right? Because 10/10 is a whole. If this is divided into 10 parts, and I know this isn't very accurate, let's just imagine this is, these are definitely not all the same size. If I've got 10 tenths, that means I've got all 10 of these guys coloured in. So I've got the whole block, I've got one whole, right? This is 10 tenths, that's the same as saying one whole. So if I have one whole plus another 10 tenths, well that brings me up to 2 wholes now. I've got 2 blocks. But remember, I have to add 2/10, not just 1/10. So I need to add 1 more tenth. So that means I've got 2 blocks plus another tenth. So 2 1/10. It can be a little tricky when you're moving from one whole number to the next whole number. So these ones over here, these are all very easy because you're just adding the tenths. But then when you move to the whole number, you just need to make sure that you know that you're going up to the next whole number here. So 2 wholes and 1/10. And now the next part's easy again. So 2 1/10, add another 2/10, and we end up with 2 3/10, because 1 plus 2 is 3. So 1/10 plus 2/10 is 3/10. So this question is very similar to the last question, but there is one difference, and that's that when we look at these first 2 numbers in the pattern, 3 3/10 goes down to 3 1/10. So instead of an increasing pattern, this is actually a decreasing pattern. We don't add to get to our next number, we subtract. So we're going to be subtracting something. And you can see that the ones column stays the same here. So let's just focus on the tenths and see what happens with the tenths. We started off with 3/10, and then we end up with just 1/10. So how many tenths did we take away? We took away 2/10. So we need to subtract 2/10 to get to the next number. And let's check to see if that works for the next 2 numbers in the pattern. if I subtract another 2/10 or 0.2 from 3.1, do I end up with 2.9? And you might be able to look at that and straight away say, yes, I do. 3.1 minus 0.2 leaves me with 2.9. But again, this is that tricky part where we're going from one whole number to the next whole number. So that might be a little bit difficult to visualize, and I'm going to show you another way to visualize that. So what you can do is, you can just draw up a number line to visualize this. And I'm going to start with 3.3 up here, and because I'm going down, I'm going to move to the left on my number line because I'm going down. So I'm then going to draw up a number line, and I'm just going to go down by 1/10, not 2/10. Even though our pattern goes down by 2/10 up here, it's easier for me to draw a number line going down by 1/10. So I'm just going to sketch that up, and this is not accurate. These little markings should be exactly the same distance apart, but this is just a sketch to help me, so it's all right if they're not perfect. And how far am I going to go? Well, there's no need to go past 2.3 because my number pattern ends at 2.3. So I don't need to go any lower than that. So I'll leave it there, and we don't have to worry about this section of the number line here. Oh, okay. So if I start at 3.3 and subtract 2/10, that's 1/10, that's 2/10, I end up at 3.1. So I know that my first step was correct. Now if I subtract another 2/10, 1/10, 2/10, I end up at 2.9. So there you go. I know that I'm definitely subtracting 2/10 each time because it works for the first three numbers. So if I want to work out the next number, the fourth number in the pattern, all I have to do is subtract another 2/10 or another 0.2. And if you need to use the number line for that, it's really easy to do so. You end up at 2.7. But you might be able to just say to yourself, 2.9 minus another 0.2 brings me to 2.7. If not, you can always use the number line. So let's do it one more time. Subtract another 2/10, 1, 2, and I end up at 2.5. And I may as well just check to see if I do it again one more time, do I end up with 2.3? So I can make sure that my answer matches the question. 1, 2/10. Yes, I do. I end up at 2.3. So that means I think I've got the right pattern here.